The cold winds of history swept young Joe Bugner and his family out of Hungary in the late 1950s. The streets of Budapest were on fire with resistance during the Hungarian uprising of 1956, but the Soviet tanks rolled in, crushing hopes and forcing families like the Bugners to flee. With hearts heavy and dreams uncertain, they escaped to the United Kingdom, seeking safety and a second chance at life. They landed in Wisbech, a sleepy town with a beating heart, where about 80 refugees shared space in the student hostel at Smedley's factory. Life wasn't glamorous, but it was safe. And for Joe, that was enough to start carving out something bigger. Eventually, the Bugners moved to St. Ives, a small town by the fens. Locals there had a name for tough, fearless souls, fun tigers. And young Joe, strong and silent, fit right in. At school, he wasn't just another kid trying to blend in. He was a natural, fast, powerful, competitive. He picked up sports like he was born for them. In 1964, he hurled the discus farther than any other junior in the nation. A champion at just 14. As a teenager, Joe settled in Bedford, and that's where the boxing bug truly bit him. He trained at the Bedford Boys Club under the watchful eye of Paul King. It was there, in that sweaty gym with peeling walls and worn-out gloves, that Joe started to dream beyond small-town fights. He also juggled school at Goldington Road, but make no mistake, his eyes were locked on the ring. His amateur journey was short, just 16 fights, but impressive, 13 wins. He didn't wait around. In 1967, at just 17, he jumped into the professional scene. His trainer, Andy Smith, had seen enough. Smith didn't trust the way amateur matchups were being picked. He wanted control. He wanted Joe protected. So they went pro, straight into the fire. It wasn't a dream start. In his first pro fight, under the glitzy lights of the London Hilton, Bugner was stopped in the third round by Paul Brown. A TKO loss. But Joe didn't sulk. He didn't run. He got up, brushed himself off, and came back with the kind of hunger you can't fake. What followed was a storm. From 1968 to 1969, the teenager tore through the heavyweight ranks, stacking up 18 wins in a row, 13 by knockout. Each fight tougher, each opponent stronger. The streak only stopped with a razor-thin loss to the seasoned Dick Hall, but Bugner didn't blink. He charged ahead, wrapping up the 1960s with 3 more thunderous wins. By 1970, the world was watching. Joe wasn't just another fighter. He was a rising force. That year, he notched 9 straight wins, taking out big names like Chuck Wepner, Manuel Ramos, and Brian London. The boxing world buzzed. Was this quiet Hungarian kid really the future of the heavyweight division? The spotlight got brighter when talk turned to Henry Cooper, the man who had dropped Muhammad Ali. Cooper held the British Commonwealth, and European titles. A true legend. Bugner wanted him, badly. But there was a catch. Joe was still too young. The rules said you had to be 21 to fight for the Commonwealth crown. So he waited. He trained. He stayed sharp. In the meantime, he took out Carl Gizzi and fought to a draw with Bill Drover, all just weeks before the Cooper clash finally got the green light. But beneath Joe's fast rise, there was something more complex. While fans admired his iron chin and clever movement, critics said he was too cautious, too careful. They wanted blood, not patience. But what most of them didn't know was this. Something dark had haunted Bugner early in his career. One of his early opponents, Ulrich Regis, died from brain injuries not long after a fight they had in London. Regis had gone the distance, but he never recovered. The tragedy scarred Joe. Some said he was never the same. That from that day forward, he never truly unleashed his full power in the ring. That, deep down, he carried the weight of that night in every jab, every dodge, every held-back punch. Still, Joe Bugner wasn't done. Far from it. He had come too far, from the ruins of revolution to the edge of greatness. And the boxing world was about to find out. Win or lose, Joe Bugner was here to fight. March 1971. Under the lights, with a tension thick enough to cut, a 21-year-old Joe Bugner stood across the ring from a British icon, Henry Cooper. Cooper wasn't just a fighter. He was a legend, the man who had dropped Muhammad Ali and made the nation proud. Most fans thought this would be Cooper's final glorious moment. But Bugner had other plans. What followed was 15 rounds of back-and-forth war. Cooper pressed forward, swinging with fire, backed by years of experience and the roar of a loyal crowd. Bugner stayed cool, calm. He moved with purpose, snapping out jabs like a machine, using footwork and smarts beyond his years. When the final bell rang, both men had their hands raised. Then came the moment no one could forget. Harry Gibbs, the lone judge, delivered the verdict. Bugner by the smallest margin possible, 1/4 of a point. The room split in two. Half of Britain was outraged. Cooper's fans felt robbed. How could the young upstart beat the national hero? But others pointed to Bugner's sharp jab, his clean shots, his ability to control the space. The Times backed him. They said he did enough. But whether you cheered or booed, one thing was certain. Joe Bugner had just become the British, Commonwealth, and European heavyweight champion. And he had shaken up British boxing forever. Now in the world's top 10, Bugner looked unstoppable. He defended his European title with a slick win over the rugged German Jürgen Blin. But the sport has a way of reminding you how cruel it can be. Later that same year, Bugner suffered 2 surprise defeats, one to Jack Bedell and another to Larry Middleton. Sandwiched in between, he managed a win over Mike Boswell, but the damage was done. That Bedell loss was especially painful. It stripped him of all 3 of his titles. Many said the problem was simple. Joe had talent, but he lacked seasoning. He'd come into the sport fast, with only a short amateur career. Now he was paying the price. But Bugner didn't give up. In 1972, he fought like a man possessed. 8 straight wins. He battered Blin in a rematch and snatched back the European title with a crushing knockout. He was sharper, more patient, and now he had real momentum. His team began chasing bigger fish, names that shook the world. In early 1973, he defended his title against Dutch fighter Rudy Lubbers. Another win, but the real tests were waiting. That year, Bugner stepped into the ring with 2 of the greatest heavyweights who ever lived, Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier. He lost both fights on points. But let's be clear, Bugner didn't just show up to survive. He fought hard against Ali. He held his ground, made it competitive. Ali himself said afterwards that Joe had what it took to be a world champion. Even Angelo Dundee, Ali's trainer, agreed. Then came the war with Frazier. July 1973, Earl's Court, London. The crowd was electric. Frazier came in with his trademark pressure, hooks like cannonballs. In the 10th round, he landed a left hook that would have ended most careers. Bugner hit the deck, but he got up, bloodied, battered but swinging. By the end of the round, it was Joe who had Frazier staggering. It was a classic. Many said it was the hardest fight Frazier ever had outside of his battles with Ali and Foreman. For Bugner, it was perhaps his finest hour. After those brutal tests, Bugner went on another run, 8 straight wins. He took down respected names like Jimmy Ellis, a former WBA world champion, and Mac Foster, a fearsome puncher. By the end of 1974, Bugner wasn't just back. He was ranked among the top 5 heavyweights on earth. Then came the moment every fighter dreams of. June 1975, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Bugner versus Ali for the World Heavyweight Championship. But the Malaysian heat was suffocating. Fighting outdoors in that kind of humidity was a nightmare. Bugner boxed defensively, trying to survive and counter when he could. Ali danced, jabbed, and piled up points. The fight went the full 15 rounds. Ali kept the crown, and Bugner faced harsh criticism. Some said he didn't try hard enough, that he didn't go for broke. Years later, in a reunion with Henry Cooper, Bugner opened up. He said the heat that night was unbearable, like fighting underwater, and he did what he had just to stay standing. But public opinion didn't care for excuses. Then came 1976, and with it, a shock announcement. Bugner was done, retired, no more boxing. He said his heart wasn't in it anymore, but it didn't last. Just months later, Bugner made a furious return. He'd watched Richard Dunn, the new British champion, get demolished by Ali. Bugner was furious, not just at Dunn, but at how the public had forgotten him. In October, he stepped back into the ring like a man on a mission, and in one devastating round, he blew Dunn away. The fire was back. For the first time in years, fans saw an angry Joe Bugner. Ruthless, focused, he reclaimed the British Commonwealth and European titles in just 3 minutes. In 1977, He traveled to the U.S. and fought Ron Lyle, one of the division's most dangerous men. It was close, very close. Lyle won on 2 cards, Bugner on the other. But once again, Joe walked away with respect. And then, he vanished again. Retirement called. And though he would return in fits and starts over the years, the golden run was done. But what a run it was. From a refugee boy escaping tanks in Hungary to trading punches with Ollie and Frazier, Joe Bugner never had it easy. He wasn't the most loved. He wasn't the most celebrated. But he stood in the fire again and again and earned his place in boxing history the hard way, one brutal round at a time. By the dawn of the 1980s, most people thought they'd seen the last of Joe Bugner. He'd stood toe-to-toe with the giants of the Golden Age: Ollie, Frazier, Ellis, Lyle. He'd won titles, lost them, and come roaring back again. But now, after another retirement, it looked like he was gone for good. Then, without warning, he came back. May 1980. After 3 years in the shadows, Bugner laced up his gloves again and stepped into the ring. His opponent, Gilberto Acuna, was no star, but Bugner didn't need one. He needed a spark. He got it. One explosive knockout later, Joe was back. Or so it seemed. Just as quickly as he returned, he vanished once more. 2 years later, the comeback train rolled again. But this time, things were different. Bugner was heavier, slower, and rustier than ever. He hadn't had a real fight in 5 years. And across the ring stood Ernie Shavers, one of the most feared punchers in boxing history. Shavers wasted no time. 2 rounds in, the fight was over. A cut eye ended it, but the writing was on the wall. This was not the Joe Bugner people remembered. Still, he kept going. Call it pride. Call it stubbornness. Call it unfinished business. Whatever it was, Bugner found something inside himself and started grinding again. He beat John Dennis. He dropped Danny Sutton. He outclassed Winston Allen and Eddie Nielsen. Wins piled up. People started to believe again. But then came a fight with Marvis Frazier, son of Joe. Bugner, usually calm and calculating, looked distant, as if his heart wasn't in it. He barely let his hands go. He lost. Badly. He bounced back with a solid win over Anders Eklund, and then entered the ring against Norway's Stefan Tangstad. Joe seemed to edge it, landing cleaner shots, but the judges didn't agree. Another loss. Another shrug from Bugner. It was like he was fighting without fire. And just when it looked like the end for real, he moved to Australia. That's when everything changed. Bugner became Aussie Joe, new home, new name, and a new reason to fight. He took Australian citizenship and began training like a man on a mission. No one expected much from him, but what came next shocked everyone. First, he beat James Tillis, the same man who had gone the distance with a young Mike Tyson. Then he toppled David Bay, a former world title contender. And then, the big one, Joe Bugner outboxed Greg Page, a former WBA heavyweight champ. It wasn't lucky. It wasn't close. It was domination. At nearly 40, Bugner was climbing the mountain again. He wanted Tyson, but the public wanted Bruno. October 24th, 1987. White Hart Lane, under the lights, with a roaring crowd. Frank Bruno versus Joe Bugner, the biggest all-British heavyweight fight in 16 years. The build-up was electric. 2 powerhouses, one older and wiser, the other young and explosive. They met in the center of the ring, and for 7 rounds, it was a battle. But age caught up. In round 8, Bruno unloaded and forced the stoppage. Bugner had nothing left. He retired again, his 3rd time walking away. But history has a funny way of lighting old fires. In 1995, George Foreman, at 45, shocked the world and became heavyweight champion. It sent a ripple through the sport, and Bugner felt it. If George could do it, why not him? At 45, Bugner returned once more, this time in Australia, where fans still loved him. He beat Vince Cervi to claim the national heavyweight title. Then he beat Wes Turner. Suddenly, there's talk again. Then came the big test. Scott Welch, younger, faster, hungry. Bugner, at 46, fought bravely. But the years were too much. Welch wore him down and stopped him in round 6. Most figured that was it. But Bugner still wasn't done. He kept fighting against younger men, stronger men, but not smarter. In 1996, he beat young Hamona to win the Pacific and Australasian title. In '97, he beat Waisiki Ligaloa. Then came Colin Wilson, tough as nails, and Bugner added the Australian title to his growing list. In 1998, he defended his belts against Bob Morovic in a war. And then, against all odds, he won a world title. It wasn't the WBC, it wasn't the WBA, but it was still a crown. At 48 years and 110 days, Joe Bugner became the WBF heavyweight champion by outboxing James Bone Crusher Smith, a former world champ and a serious puncher. He was now the oldest man to ever win a version of the heavyweight championship. One last time, in June 1999, Bugner stepped through the ropes. At 49, nearly half a century old, he faced Levi Billups, a big, powerful fighter. The bout ended in controversy, with Billups disqualified for low blows. But Bugner got his hand raised. And just like that, after decades of battles, scars, and comebacks, Aussie Joe finally walked away for good, this time on his own terms. Joe Bugner fought 83 times in the ring and won 69 of those battles, 41 of those wins. He didn't leave it to the judges. He ended them with his fists. But for all the numbers and titles, Bugner's story didn't end when the gloves came off. Not even close. In 2004, long after the roar of the crowd had faded, Joe sat down for an interview, reflecting on a career that saw him face some of the most dangerous men in boxing history. He didn't hesitate when asked who hit the hardest. Ernie Shavers, he said. That man could crack. But the worst beating? That came from Ron Lyle, a man known for going to war in the ring. Joe took it on the chin, like he always did, but he never forgot it. After stepping away from boxing, again, Joe and his wife Marlene decided to chase a quieter dream. They moved to Australia, started a vineyard, and tried their hand in new life. But it didn't go as planned. The business fell apart in 1989, and just like that, 2 million Aussie dollars were gone. Joe had taken hits before, but this one stung in a different way. Still, he stayed. He made Brisbane home. Boxing wasn't the only place Joe Bugner made a name. Back in the 70s, kids in the UK saw him on TV and public service ads, teaching them how to cross the street safely. Then came a strange turn. He landed a role in an Italian movie, Iosto con gli Ippopotami, alongside the popular duo Bud Spencer and Terence Hill. He became a regular in their films through the 80s, throwing fake punches this time, but still looking every bit the fighter. Then Hollywood came knocking. Joe was hired as a boxing advisor for the movie Cinderella Man, the story of James J. Braddock. It could have been a proud moment, but halfway through, he was dropped from the project. Furious, Bugner didn't hold back, calling Russell Crowe, the film's star, a gutless worm. It was vintage Joe. No filter, no fear. Behind the scenes, though, things weren't going so well. Years of pounding his body in the ring had caught up. His back was a mess, a serious injury that never truly healed. The money problems didn't help either. That's why, long after most men would have called it quits, Bugner kept fighting. Not for glory, for survival. In 2008, a benefit was held in his honor, led by former boxer Kevin Lushing, a night to recognize all he'd given to the sport and everything he'd lost along the way. A year later, Joe stepped into a very different arena, the jungle. He joined a reality TV show, I'm a Celebrity. Get Me Out of Here, in November 2009, stepping in as a late arrival. He gave a fair go, lasting 12 days before bowing out after a challenge called Jungle Jail. At 59, he didn't mind losing. He'd fought bigger battles. Outside the ring and off the screen, Joe had a family. 3 kids, James, Joe Jr., and Amy, with his ex-wife Melody. Through all the chaos, he remained a father. In 2013, Joe finally put it all down in words. Joe Bugner. My story hit the shelves in Australia, and it told the truth, the wild highs, the crushing lows, and everything in between. Joe Bugner wasn't just a boxer. He was a survivor, a showman, a dreamer, a fighter in every sense of the word. Joe Bugner's life wasn't just measured in wins and losses. It was measured in comebacks, in grit and scars, in moments when he could have stayed down, but didn't. He stood toe-to-toe with legends, got booed by the crowd, praised by champions, and walked away from the ring more than once, only to return when the world thought he was finished. He took punches in the ring, and harder ones outside of it. Financial hits, personal struggles, the sting of being forgotten. But Joe never stopped swinging. He wasn't everyone's hero. He didn't always win, but he never quit. And in the end, that's what made Joe Bugner unforgettable. A man who never had it easy, but kept going anyway. A fighter through and through.